I'm sitting here at 3 a.m. in my home office, hands shaking as I type this out. I don't even know where to begin, but I need to get this off my chest because what happened over the past 72 hours has completely destroyed the life I've spent 8 years building. My wife of 6 years just left with our 2 kids. Her entire family has been blowing up my phone with threats and accusations, and I'm pretty sure half of them want me dead. But here's the thing that makes this whole situation so twisted that I can barely wrap my own head around it. Every single one of them has been collecting a paycheck from a company that I own, and until 3 days ago, none of them had a clue. Let me back up and give you the full picture, because this story doesn't start with the explosion. It starts 8 years ago when I met my wife, Rachel, at a charity fundraiser in Seattle. I was 31 at the time, she was 28, and I was immediately drawn to her warmth and genuine nature. She was volunteering at the event, helping coordinate donations for underprivileged kids, and when she smiled at me while handing me a wine glass, I swear the entire room faded away. We talked for hours that night about everything except what I did for a living, which was honestly refreshing. Here's where I need to explain something important about myself and why I made the decisions I did. When I was 24, fresh out of business school and armed with nothing but ambition and a revolutionary idea for supply chain management software, I started a company called Meridian Solutions with my best friend from college, David. We worked out of his garage, eating ramen noodles and sleeping 4 hours a night, convinced we were going to change the world. And somehow, against all odds, we actually built something incredible. By the time I was 28, Meridian Solutions had grown into a multi-million-dollar company. We'd secured contracts with major retailers, logistics companies, and manufacturers across the country. David handled the technical side while I managed operations and business development. When I turned 30, a massive tech conglomerate offered to buy us out for $47 million. David wanted to take it. He was exhausted, wanted to start a family, and saw it as our golden ticket, but I couldn't let go. Meridian was my baby, my purpose, my entire identity. So I bought David out. I gave him $18 million, took on significant debt, and became the sole owner of Meridian Solutions. It was the scariest and most exhilarating decision of my life. I restructured, brought in new talent, and over the next few years, I transformed Meridian from a successful startup into an industry leader. By the time I met Rachel, the company was valued at just over $16 million and employed about 230 people. But here's the thing about being a young CEO. I'd watched what happened to my mentors and colleagues in the tech world. I saw how people changed around them once they knew about the money and power. I watched relationships crumble under the weight of expectations and assumptions. I saw gold diggers, sycophants, and people who couldn't separate the person from the position. So I made a choice early on to keep my professional life extremely private. I didn't lie to Rachel when we met, but I didn't exactly volunteer information either. When she asked what I did, I told her I worked in supply chain management and software development. All true, I just left out the part where I owned the entire company. I dressed casually, drove a modest Honda Accord, and lived in a nice but not ostentatious apartment in a middle-class neighborhood. I wanted someone to fall in love with me, not my bank account. Rachel was a social worker at the time, working with at-risk youth in Seattle. She made $38,000 a year and was passionate about making a difference in the world. She came from a working-class family in Tacoma, the middle child of 5 kids. Her father, Frank, had worked in manufacturing before an injury forced him into early retirement. Her mother, Patricia, was a school cafeteria manager. Her siblings were a mixed bag. Her older brother, Marcus, worked in middle management at some company. Her older sister, Jennifer, was in HR somewhere. Her younger brother, Tyler, was trying to make it as a freelance graphic designer. And her younger sister, Amanda, was fresh out of college working in marketing. I fell absolutely head over heels for Rachel. She was kind, funny, passionate about helping others, and completely unimpressed by material wealth. 6 months into our relationship, I knew I wanted to marry her, but I also knew I needed to tell her the truth about who I was and what I owned. I planned this whole elaborate dinner, prepared a speech, and was ready to lay everything out on the table. But then her father had a heart attack. It was serious, triple bypass surgery, months of recovery, and medical bills that were crushing their family even with insurance. I watched Rachel stress herself sick trying to help her parents financially while barely making ends meet herself. Her siblings were all contributing what they could, but none of them had much to spare. That's when I made a decision that I've questioned every day since. I decided to help without revealing who I was. I told Rachel that I had some savings and wanted to help. I gave her parents $20,000, which I claimed was from a bonus at work. Frank and Patricia were hesitant to accept it, but Rachel convinced them, and I saw the relief wash over her face. It felt good to help, it felt right, and it made me think that maybe I could do more. Around this time, Meridian Solutions was expanding rapidly. We just landed a contract with a major national retailer and needed to hire aggressively across multiple departments. I was in meetings constantly, reviewing hundreds of applications for positions ranging from entry-level operations to senior management. And that's when I saw the applications from Rachel's family members. Marcus had applied for a logistics coordinator position. Jennifer had applied for an HR manager role. Tyler had submitted a portfolio for a graphic design contract. Even Amanda had applied for a marketing associate position. None of them knew I owned Meridian. Why would they? I'd been careful to keep my personal and professional lives completely separate. Rachel knew I worked in supply chain software, but had never asked for specifics, and I'd never volunteered them. To her and her family, I was just a regular guy with a decent job. I should have told Rachel right then. I should have sat her down and explained everything before making any decisions. But I convinced myself that this was an opportunity to genuinely help the people I was growing to love like my own family. So I did something that I've rationalized 1,000 different ways, but deep down know was probably wrong. I had my HR director flag their applications for review. Here's what I told myself to justify it. I wasn't just going to hand them jobs. They had to be actually qualified. So I had them go through the normal interview process, completely blind. The hiring managers didn't know they were connected to me because nobody at the company, except my executive assistant, knew anything about my personal life. I kept those worlds entirely separate. And here's the thing, they were qualified. Marcus had a decent resume in logistics and supply chain. Jennifer had 8 years of HR experience. Tyler's design portfolio was actually impressive. Amanda was green but eager and had a solid marketing degree. They all interviewed well, and my hiring managers recommended 3 out of the 4. Tyler's portfolio wasn't quite what we needed for the full-time position, but we did bring him on as a contractor for specific projects. I approved their hires, but I made sure they were offered fair market salaries, nothing more. Marcus got $58,000, Jennifer got $72,000, Amanda got $45,000, Tyler got project-based rates that averaged about $50,000 annually. Good salaries, but not suspiciously generous. They were all thrilled, and Rachel was ecstatic that her siblings had found such good opportunities. I proposed to Rachel 6 months later. I'd been planning to tell her everything, I swear I had, but every time I tried to bring it up, something stopped me. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was selfishness. Maybe I just loved being treated like a normal person instead of a walking ATM. When I proposed, I used my grandmother's ring because I didn't want Rachel to feel overwhelmed by something expensive. She said yes with tears streaming down her face, and I promised myself I'd tell her everything before the wedding. But then her mother got diagnosed with breast cancer. Patricia needed treatment, needed time off work, and the family was struggling again. I quietly arranged through Meridian's employee assistance program for Jennifer to get additional family medical leave benefits. I had our insurance liaison work with Patricia directly to make sure her treatments were covered under Frank's retirement insurance with maximum benefits. I donated anonymously to cover gaps. And again, I told myself I was doing the right thing. Rachel and I got married in a simple, beautiful ceremony. I paid for it with money I told her came from investments my parents had left me. My parents had passed away in a car accident when I was 26, right before Meridian really took off, and they'd never known about my success. That part was true. They had left me some money. I just didn't mention it was nowhere near what I actually had. We bought a house together, a nice 3-bedroom in a good neighborhood, but nothing that would raise eyebrows. I told Rachel I'd gotten a promotion at work, which was absurd since I was already the CEO, but she believed me because why wouldn't she? I was driving a newer car now, a Toyota Camry, real high roller stuff. We took modest vacations. We lived comfortably but not lavishly. I kept up the illusion perfectly. Over the next few years, Rachel's family members all continued working at Meridian. Marcus got promoted to senior logistics coordinator, then to operations manager. His salary increased to $95,000. Jennifer became a senior HR manager overseeing a team of 6, making $88,000. Amanda showed real talent in marketing and worked her way up to marketing coordinator at $62,000. Tyler continued getting contracts from us regularly. They were all doing well, advancing based on their actual merit, because I'd been careful to wall myself off from their direct reporting lines. I'd installed a CEO named Robert Chen to be the public face of Meridian Solutions. Robert was a brilliant operator who I trusted completely, and he knew the truth about my ownership, but he was one of only 3 people in the company who did. To everyone else, including Rachel's family, Robert was the boss, and I was just some mysterious investor who stayed in the background. I did my actual work remotely, through video calls with Robert and my executive team, and I kept my home office door locked during work hours. Rachel and I had two beautiful children, Mason and Sophie, now 5 and 3. I was a devoted father and husband. I coached Mason's soccer team. I did midnight diaper changes and bedtime stories. I was present and engaged, and I genuinely loved my life. But I was living a lie, and that lie was getting bigger and more complicated every single day. The thing is, keeping the secret became almost routine after a while. I'd gotten so good at compartmentalizing that I almost forgot I was doing it. Thanksgiving dinners where Marcus would complain about some company policy that I'd literally signed off on. Christmas parties where Jennifer would gossip about upper management decisions that I'd made. Birthday celebrations where Tyler would thank God for Meridian's contracts keeping him afloat. And I'd just nod and smile and bite my tongue. But then things started to change. About a year ago, Marcus started getting really comfortable at work, maybe too comfortable. He started coming in late, leaving early, taking long lunches. His performance reviews started slipping. His manager, a woman named Sarah Chen, who was Robert's sister and one of our best operations directors, started documenting issues. Marcus apparently didn't take it well. He started complaining at family dinners about his bitch boss who had it out for him, who didn't appreciate his contributions, who was probably racist and definitely sexist. I knew the truth. I saw the documentation. Marcus was underperforming, and Sarah was being more than fair with him. She'd given him multiple chances to improve, offered resources, been incredibly patient. But Marcus seemed to think that because he'd been there for 5 years, he was untouchable. At family dinners, Rachel's family would rally around him, talking about how unfair corporate culture was, how loyal employees got screwed, how he should go to HR. The irony was that HR was Jennifer, his sister, and Jennifer was in an impossible position because she actually knew the truth about Marcus's performance. She'd seen the documentation because Sarah had properly escalated it through channels. But Jennifer couldn't really tell the family that Marcus was legitimately screwing up without betraying her professional ethics. So she stayed quiet, which the family interpreted as her being powerless to help him. Then about 8 months ago, the family started talking about money at dinners more frequently. Frank's medical bills from his heart attack years ago were finally paid off, but now Patricia's cancer had returned, more aggressive this time. She needed experimental treatments that insurance wouldn't fully cover. The family was trying to pool resources, but it wasn't enough. I wanted to help. God, I wanted to help so badly, but I was trapped by my own deception. I couldn't just hand them $100,000 without raising questions about where it came from. So I did what I'd been doing. I helped secretly. I had Meridian's insurance benefits administrator work with Patricia's doctors to get her into a clinical trial that would cover most costs. I made anonymous donations to the cancer center where she was being treated. I found ways to funnel money through charitable channels. But it wasn't enough, and I could see the stress eating away at Rachel. She was working extra hours at her nonprofit job, which now paid her $55,000 a year. She was losing sleep, losing weight, and I felt like the worst husband in the world because I could solve all of her problems with a single conversation, but I was too much of a coward to have it. Then 6 months ago, everything started accelerating toward disaster. Tyler came to a family dinner furious because Meridian had rejected his latest project proposal. He'd submitted a design concept for a rebrand that he'd spent weeks on, and the marketing department had passed on it. Tyler went on this whole rant about how the company was creatively bankrupt, how they didn't recognize real talent, how he was going to start looking for other clients. The thing was, I'd seen his proposal. It was objectively not good. It didn't fit our brand strategy, the execution was weak, and 3 other designers had submitted stronger concepts. But I couldn't say any of that. I just had to sit there while he ranted, and Rachel rubbed his back sympathetically. Around the same time, Amanda started dating a guy named Derek who worked in sales at Meridian. I didn't know him well, but I knew of him. He was young, ambitious, kind of cocky, and had a reputation for bending rules. Amanda brought him to a family dinner, and I watched him dominate the conversation, talking about his sales numbers, his commission checks, his career trajectory. He mentioned casually that he knew some inside information about the company, that big changes were coming, that people should position themselves carefully. That made my antenna go up because I wasn't planning any big changes, so I had Robert quietly look into it, and we discovered that Derek was involved in some borderline unethical practices. He was making promises to clients that our products couldn't keep, manipulating contracts, and potentially setting us up for legal liability. We started building a case to let him go. But before we could act, Marcus's situation came to a head. He'd been on a performance improvement plan for 90 days, and he hadn't improved. Sarah had done everything by the book, given him every chance, but he'd actually gotten worse. He'd missed important deadlines, made costly errors in shipment routing, and had been insubordinate in meetings. Robert and Jennifer both reviewed the case and agreed that termination was the only option left. Marcus was fired on a Thursday afternoon. By Thursday evening, my phone was ringing off the hook. Rachel was crying, saying her brother had been unfairly terminated, that his boss had it out for him, that the company was heartless. Frank was leaving me voicemails about family loyalty. Patricia, sick with cancer, was apparently in tears over her son losing his job. Tyler was texting me about how corporations were evil. Even Amanda was sending me messages about how Meridian had shown its true colors. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell them all the truth right then, that Marcus had been given more chances than almost any other employee would have gotten, that his termination was completely justified, that Jennifer had actually protected him from being fired months earlier by advocating for the performance improvement plan instead. But I couldn't say any of that without revealing everything. Instead, I played the supportive husband and brother-in-law. I told Rachel I was sorry, that it sounded unfair, that Marcus deserved better. I helped him update his resume. I even gave him some money to help with bills, which he accepted without much gratitude, as if I owed it to him. The whole time I was screaming inside. Then 2 months ago, we had to fire Derek. His unethical practices had finally crossed a clear line. He'd falsified information on a contract, and we had documentation. It was cut and dry. Robert terminated him personally, and suddenly Amanda hated Meridian too. She was heartbroken, convinced that Derek had been set up by jealous colleagues, that the company was toxic, that they'd destroyed a good man's career. She came to Sunday dinner in tears, and the whole family rallied around her. They started talking about Meridian Solutions like it was this evil empire, this soulless corporation that chewed people up and spit them out. Jennifer was quiet through all of this, and I could see the stress on her face. She knew the truth about both terminations, but she was bound by confidentiality, and I was bound by my own web of lies. Tyler announced he was done taking contracts from Meridian. He said he couldn't in good conscience work for a company with such poor values. Never mind that his work had genuinely declined in quality, and we were probably going to stop contracting him anyway. Now it was his righteous choice. The family started having conversations about all of them leaving Meridian. Marcus was obviously already out and job hunting. Tyler had quit taking their contracts. Amanda was talking about looking for other opportunities. Even Jennifer was mentioning that maybe it was time for a change, that the corporate culture had shifted, that it wasn't the place she'd joined 5 years ago. And Frank, dealing with his wife's cancer and his kids' career troubles, started going on these rants about wealth inequality and corporate greed. He'd talk about how companies like Meridian were probably owned by some billionaire asshole who didn't care about the workers, who just counted his money while people suffered, who'd never done a real day's work in his life. And I'd sit there, the billionaire asshole in question, nodding along while my father-in-law fantasized about eating the rich. The whole situation was becoming unbearable, but I still couldn't figure out how to come clean without destroying everything. How do you tell your wife of 6 years that you've been lying to her since the day you met? How do you tell your in-laws that you're the owner of the company they now despise? How do you explain that you've been secretly managing their careers and helping them financially while pretending to be just a regular guy? I started seeing a therapist, secretly of course, Dr. Sarah Goldstein, a woman who specialized in family systems and complicated secrets. I couldn't tell her everything because of confidentiality concerns around the business, but I told her enough. She said what I already knew, that I needed to come clean, that the longer I waited the worse it would be, that I was building a house of cards that would inevitably collapse. But I kept telling myself I needed the right moment, the right approach, the right words. I drafted speeches. I planned conversations. I chickened out 100 times, and while I was dithering, everything was falling apart. Then 3 weeks ago, Patricia's health took a serious turn for the worse. The treatments weren't working, and her doctors were talking about hospice care. The family was devastated. Rachel was barely functioning, spending every free moment at her mother's bedside. I was trying to be supportive while also secretly working with the doctors to see if there were any other options, any experimental treatments, anything money could buy. That's when Frank made a decision that changed everything. He decided that the family needed money for Patricia's care and that he was going to sue Meridian Solutions for wrongful termination on Marcus's behalf. He'd somehow gotten them connected with a labor lawyer who apparently thought they had a case. Marcus would sue the company, they'd get a settlement, and they could use that money for Patricia's medical bills. When Rachel told me this, my blood ran cold. A lawsuit would mean discovery. It would mean documentation. It would mean my name potentially coming up as the owner. I tried to talk her out of it, suggested that maybe it wasn't the right approach, that lawsuits were stressful and uncertain. But Rachel surprised me by supporting her father completely. She said that if Marcus had really been wronged, he deserved justice, and if a corporation as profitable as Meridian had to pay, so be it. I immediately called Robert and our legal team. They reviewed the case and confirmed what I already knew. Marcus didn't have a case. The documentation was airtight, but they also warned me that lawsuits were unpredictable and that my ownership would likely come out during discovery if it went far enough. They recommended settling quickly and quietly just to make it go away. But I couldn't settle without raising questions. If Meridian suddenly offered Marcus a settlement for what our lawyers said was a baseless claim, it would look suspicious. The family would wonder why. Plus, Marcus was now talking big about taking the company down, exposing their unfair practices, being a whistleblower. He'd convinced himself he was some kind of corporate corruption crusader. I was trapped, again, by my own lies, again. 2 weeks ago, I made a decision. I decided I was going to tell Rachel everything before the lawsuit progressed any further. I was going to sit her down, explain the entire history, accept the consequences, and finally stop living this double life. I planned to do it on a Saturday when the kids were at her sister's house, and we had the afternoon alone. But on the Friday before that planned conversation, something happened that made everything infinitely worse. Tyler, who was struggling financially after stopping work with Meridian, apparently decided to do some investigating into the company ownership out of spite. I don't know exactly how he did it, but he managed to find some public records, maybe some old articles from when the company was first growing, and he pieced together that I was connected to Meridian beyond just being an employee. He didn't get the full picture. He didn't realize I owned the entire company, but he found enough to think that I was some kind of investor or silent partner who'd been hiding my involvement. And instead of coming to me directly, instead of asking me about it, he went straight to the family with his discovery. I was at work in my home office on a video call with Robert and our CFO about quarterly projections when Rachel burst through the door without knocking. I barely had time to mute the call before she was in front of my desk, her face red, tears streaming, holding her phone up. "Tyler says you're part of Meridian," she said, her voice shaking. "He says you're an investor or something and you've been hiding it. Tell me it's not true. Tell me he's making it up." I could hear Tyler on speakerphone in the background, her whole family apparently on a group call, and I knew in that moment that everything was about to explode. I looked at Rachel, at the betrayal already forming in her eyes, and I made my last mistake in this whole debacle. Instead of immediately coming clean, I hesitated. I looked at my computer screen where Robert and my CFO were watching this unfold on video, confused. I looked back at Rachel, and in that 2-second pause, she knew. "Oh my God," she whispered, "it's true." "Rachel, let me explain." "How much?" she demanded. "How much of the company do you own? Are you a partner, an investor? What?" I could have downplayed it. I could have said I had a small stake, bought in early, kept it quiet for privacy reasons. But I was so tired of lying, so exhausted from years of deception, that the truth just came out. "I own all of it," I said quietly. "I founded Meridian Solutions. I own 100% of the company." The look on Rachel's face will haunt me for the rest of my life. It was like I'd physically struck her. She actually stumbled backward, catching herself on the doorframe. Through her phone speaker, I could hear her family erupting in confusion and anger. "You what?" Frank's voice boomed through the phone. "You own the company that fired my son, the company my daughters work for." "Rachel, please let me explain everything," I started, but she was backing away from me like I was a stranger, like I was dangerous. "You've been lying to me," she said, her voice breaking. "For how long, since we met, our entire relationship?" "I didn't lie, I just—" "You lied," she screamed, and I heard Sophie start crying somewhere in the house. "You let me think you were someone you're not. You let my family work for you without telling them. You fired my brother and pretended to comfort me about it." "He deserved to be fired, Rachel. He had documented performance issues." "Don't you dare," she was sobbing now. "Don't you dare try to justify any of this. Who are you? I don't even know who you are." The kids were both crying now, scared by their mothers yelling. Through the phone, I could hear the family in chaos. Jennifer was saying something about professional ethics violations. Tyler was calling me a liar and a manipulator. Frank was threatening to come over. Amanda was crying about Derek. Marcus was shouting the loudest, something about entrapment and fraud. "Everyone needs to calm down," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "I know this is a shock, but if everyone would just let me explain." "Explain what?" Rachel cut me off. "Explain how you've been playing puppet master with my family's lives, how you've been secretly controlling their careers, how you've been lying to my face for 8 years." "I helped your family," I shot back, my own frustration finally breaking through. "Your father's heart attack, I paid for that. Your mother's cancer treatments, I've been covering the gaps. Everyone's jobs, their salaries, their insurance, I made sure your family was taken care of." "Without telling us," Rachel screamed. You decided what we needed. You decided what we deserved. You decided to play God with our lives without giving us any choice in the matter. Do you not see how messed up that is?" Through the phone, Jennifer's voice came through, cold and professional. "This is a massive conflict of interest. I've been making HR decisions about my own family members without knowing the owner of the company is my brother-in-law. Every hiring decision, every promotion, every termination, all of it is potentially compromised. This could destroy my entire career." "Jennifer, you made those decisions independently. I never interfered." "That's not how it's going to look," she shouted. "That's not how any of this is going to look. I could lose my HR certification over this. The company could face lawsuits." Marcus's voice came through next, and I could hear the glee in it. "Oh, we're definitely suing now. This is fraud. This is conspiracy. I don't even know what this is, but it's illegal as hell." "It's not illegal," I said wearily. "I own the company. I'm allowed to hire qualified candidates. You all went through proper interview processes." "Proper?" Tyler laughed bitterly. "You were deciding our fates the whole time. You rejected my design work. You hired and promoted us like we were characters in your little game. None of it was real." "Your design work was rejected because it wasn't good enough," I snapped, and I immediately regretted it. The phone erupted again. Tyler was shouting about how I'd sabotaged him. Amanda was crying harder. Frank was calling me names I'd never heard him use before. Patricia's weak voice came through, asking what was happening, someone trying to explain it to her. Rachel was just staring at me now, tears streaming down her face, shaking her head slowly. "I don't know you," she whispered. "I thought I knew you, but I don't know you at all." "Rachel, I'm the same person I've always been." "No," she cut me off firmly. "The person I married was honest. The person I married was kind and humble and real. You're none of those things. You're a liar who's been manipulating everyone around him for years." "I was trying to protect us. I've seen what money does to relationships. I wanted you to love me for me." "So you built our entire relationship on deception?" she asked incredulously. "You don't see how that's worse. You don't see how that makes everything we have meaningless." "Our love isn't meaningless," I pleaded. "Everything I feel for you, for our kids, that's all real." "I can't believe anything you say," she screamed. "How can I? You've been lying for 8 years. What else have you lied about? Is your name even real? Did your parents actually die, or was that another convenient story?" "That one hurt. Rachel, my parents' death was real. You know that's real." "I don't know anything." She was grabbing her phone, heading for the door. "I'm taking the kids and going to my parents' house. Don't follow us. Don't call me. I need to think." "Rachel, please." But she was gone, and minutes later I heard her loading the crying kids into the car and driving away. Through my computer speakers, I heard Robert's voice gently asking if I was okay, if I wanted to continue the meeting or reschedule. I'd forgotten they'd witnessed that entire thing. I ended the call and sat in my office in complete silence, my entire world crumbling around me. That was 3 days ago, and somehow things have only gotten worse since then. Within hours of Rachel leaving, the entire family had apparently convened at Frank and Patricia's house for an emergency meeting about what to do about me. Jennifer called me once from her personal phone, her voice tight and professional, to inform me that she was submitting her resignation from Meridian effective immediately and would be consulting with a lawyer about potential liability. Amanda sent me a text saying I was dead to her and that she'd also be quitting. Tyler sent me a long email detailing every grievance he had with me and the company, copying what appeared to be a journalist contact. Marcus was the worst, though. He left me a voicemail that was so threatening I actually forwarded it to my lawyer. He said I destroyed his life, manipulated his family, and that he was going to make sure everyone knew what kind of monster I really was. He said the lawsuit was just the beginning, that he was going to go to the media, to business journals, to anyone who would listen about the fraud I'd perpetrated. Frank called me once and I answered hoping maybe he'd be reasonable. I was wrong. He told me that I was no longer welcome in his family, that I'd betrayed his daughter in the worst possible way, and that if I had any decency I'd give Rachel whatever she wanted in the divorce and stay away from all of them. When I tried to explain, tried to tell him about all the ways I'd helped them over the years, he said that made it worse, not better. That I'd made them all into charity cases without their knowledge, that I'd stripped them of their dignity and agency. I tried calling Rachel probably 50 times that first day. She didn't answer once. I sent texts, emails, voicemails, all begging her to just talk to me, to let me explain fully, to not make any permanent decisions in anger. Nothing. Finally, late that first night, I got a text from her. My lawyer will contact you about custody arrangements and separation. Do not come to my parents' house. Do not contact me again except through legal counsel. I'd never even thought about divorce. In my mind, yes, this was bad, but we'd work through it. We loved each other. We had kids together. We'd built a life. But Rachel was already talking to lawyers, already using words like custody and separation. The next day, day 2 of this nightmare, I got a call from Robert. Apparently, word had spread through Meridian that there was some kind of personal connection between me, the mysterious owner, and several employees. Jennifer's sudden resignation had raised questions. Robert wanted to know how I wanted to handle it internally. I told him the truth needed to come out, at least within the company. We scheduled an emergency meeting with the executive team and department heads to explain the situation. I video called in and explained that I'd had family members by marriage working at the company, that I'd maintained strict separation of my personal and professional life, that all hiring and personnel decisions had been made through proper channels without my interference, and that some of those family members were now choosing to leave the company for personal reasons. The reactions were mixed. Some people seemed understanding, even sympathetic. Others looked uncomfortable with the whole situation. Our legal counsel, a sharp woman named Margaret Way, asked pointed questions about whether I'd influenced any hiring or firing decisions, whether there was any documentation that could suggest impropriety, whether the company was exposed to liability. I was honest with her. I'd flagged the initial applications for review, but hadn't been involved in the actual hiring decisions. I'd been aware of Marcus's performance issues and his termination, but Sarah and Jennifer had made those calls through proper procedures. I'd known about Derek's unethical behavior and supported the decision to fire him, but Robert had actually done it. For Tyler's contract work, I'd been more directly involved in reviewing his submissions, but always alongside the actual marketing team who'd made the recommendations. Margaret looked worried. She said that even with everything done properly, the optics were terrible. If Marcus followed through on his lawsuit and the family relationships came out, it would look like a conflict of interest at minimum. She recommended we prepare for potential legal action and media attention. That's when it really hit me that this wasn't just about my marriage falling apart. This was about potential damage to the company I'd spent 15 years building, the company that 230 people depended on for their livelihoods, the company that was my entire professional identity and legacy. I spent the rest of that day with my legal team, going through every document related to the hiring, employment, and termination of Rachel's family members. Everything was by the book. Every decision was documented and justified, but Margaret was right, the optics were awful. That night I tried a different approach with Rachel. I wrote her a long email, not trying to justify what I'd done, but explaining my thinking. I told her about my fears around money and relationships, about watching what wealth did to people I cared about wanting to be loved for myself and not my bank account. I told her about every time I'd almost told her the truth, every moment I'd chickened out. I apologized for the deception while trying to help her understand the intention behind it. I sent it at midnight and watched my email obsessively for hours, hoping for a response. At 4 a.m, I finally got one. It was 3 sentences. Your intentions don't matter, your impact does, and the impact is that you've destroyed our marriage and hurt my entire family. Day 3 was yesterday, and it was somehow even worse than the first 2 days. I woke up to missed calls from my PR firm. Apparently, Tyler had made good on his threat and contacted a business journalist he knew from college. The journalist had called Meridian's public office asking for comment on allegations that the company had engaged in nepotistic hiring practices and that the owner had concealed his identity from employee family members. Robert and I got on a call with our PR team to craft a response. We decided to be factual but minimal, confirm that the owner had family members by marriage who had been employed at the company, confirm that all hiring and personnel decisions were made through established procedures and proper channels, declined to comment on personnel matters or ongoing legal issues. But by midday, the story had been picked up by a local Seattle business blog. It wasn't huge news, but it was out there, and it painted me in a terrible light. The article made it sound like I'd secretly hired my wife's family, controlled their careers from the shadows, and then fired them when they didn't perform to my standards. It made me sound like some kind of megalomaniacal puppet master. The article included a quote from Marcus calling me manipulative and deceitful, and saying he feared retaliation for speaking out. Tyler was quoted saying the company had systematically devalued his creative work. Even Amanda had apparently talked to the journalist, saying she felt betrayed and used upon learning about my ownership. My phone started ringing off the hook. Friends I hadn't talked to in months were calling to ask if the articles were true. Business contacts wanted to know what was going on. David, my old business partner who I hadn't spoken to in years, sent me a text saying, "What the hell did you do?" But worse than any of that was the email I got from Rachel's lawyer. It was a formal notice that Rachel was filing for divorce on grounds of fraud and deception. She was seeking full custody of the children, the house, and a significant portion of assets. The letter detailed her position, that I had entered the marriage under false pretenses, that I had concealed material information about my financial status and professional position, and that I had demonstrated a pattern of deception that made me unfit for shared custody. I read that letter 10 times, each time feeling more sick. Full custody. She wanted to take my kids away from me. Mason and Sophie, the two best things in my life, and she wanted to take them. I immediately called my personal lawyer, a family law specialist named Richard Torres who I'd worked with on estate planning. I forwarded him everything and asked what my options were. He said we'd fight the custody issue aggressively, that lying about your job doesn't make you an unfit parent, but he was also honest that the optics were bad, and that in Washington state, courts often favored mothers, especially with young children. I asked if I should be documenting all my interactions with Rachel, saving every text and email. He said yes, and also that I should absolutely not go to her parents' house or do anything that could be construed as harassment or intimidation. He said to be patient, to let things cool down, and to prepare for a long legal battle. Then last night I got a call that broke me completely. It was Patricia, Rachel's mom, calling from her own phone. I answered immediately, hoping maybe she was going to be the voice of reason in this whole mess. She'd always been kind to me, had told me multiple times how happy she was that Rachel had found me. "Hello," I answered, trying to keep my voice steady. "You son of a bitch," Patricia said, her voice weak but full of venom. "You've been playing God with my family this whole time." "Patricia, please, I know you're angry, but—" "You paid for my medical treatments," she said. "Frank told me. You paid for his heart surgery. You got us into clinical trials and programs, and you never told us because you wanted us to be grateful to you, wanted us to be in your debt." "No, that's not why I did it. I did it because I love your daughter and I loved your family. I wanted to help." "You wanted to control us," she shouted, then started coughing. I could hear Frank in the background telling her to calm down, to not strain herself. When she came back on the line, her voice was weaker but no less angry. "You made us into your little project, your charity case. Do you have any idea how humiliating that is?" "I never thought of it that way. I just wanted to help people I cared about." "Without giving us the dignity of choice," she cut me off. "Without letting us decide if we wanted help from someone who was lying to us. My daughter loved you. She trusted you completely, and you've been lying to her face for 8 years." "I never lied about my feelings. I never lied about loving her." "Everything you did was a lie," Patricia said. "Every conversation where you pretended to be someone you weren't. Every time you acted like you were just a regular guy struggling along with us. Every family dinner where you sat there and nodded while we talked about work that you secretly controlled. All of it was lies. And now my daughter is heartbroken, my family is in chaos, and I'm dying knowing that I won't see her happy again." That last part destroyed me. "Patricia, please don't say that. You're going to beat this, and Rachel and I will work through this." "No, you won't," she said firmly, "because I'm going to make sure you don't. I'm going to tell Rachel every day if I have to that she deserves better than a man who could lie to her so easily for so long. I'm going to tell her that the trust is gone and it's never coming back. And I'm going to tell her that her children deserve a father who knows how to tell the truth." She hung up before I could respond, and I just sat there on my couch in the dark, crying harder than I'd cried since my parents died. Everything Patricia said was fair. It was all deserved. I had done exactly what she accused me of, and now I was losing everything because of it. Which brings me to now, to 3 in the morning on day 4, typing this all out because I can't sleep and I don't know what else to do. I've been sitting here going through everything, trying to figure out where it all went wrong, what I should have done differently, how I could have prevented this. The obvious answer is that I should have told Rachel the truth from the beginning, or after a few dates, or before I proposed, or before we got married, or literally any time in the past 8 years before it all exploded in my face. But I didn't, and now I'm sitting in my empty house, separated from my wife and kids, watching my reputation crumble, facing lawsuits and divorce proceedings and custody battles. The thing that kills me is that I genuinely thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I was protecting my relationship by keeping money out of the equation. I thought I was helping Rachel's family by making sure they had good jobs and taking care of their medical needs. I thought I was being noble and selfless, but really I was just being a coward and a manipulator. Rachel was right. My intentions don't matter. The impact does. And the impact is that I've hurt everyone I care about most in the world. I don't know what's going to happen next. My lawyer says the custody fight could take months. The lawsuit from Marcus is moving forward, even though my legal team says it's baseless. Jennifer is apparently consulting with employment lawyers about whether she has any liability exposure from the HR decisions she made. The media attention is small but growing. Robert called me earlier today to say that 2 clients have reached out asking about the allegations and whether they should be concerned about working with Meridian. Everything I've built, both personally and professionally, is falling apart, and it's entirely my own fault. I keep thinking about what I would tell someone else in this situation. I'd tell them they were an idiot for keeping such a massive secret for so long. I'd tell them that you can't build a real relationship on deception, no matter how well-intentioned. I'd tell them that treating people like they can't handle the truth is actually incredibly disrespectful, even if you're trying to help them. But knowing all that doesn't help me now. The damage is done. Part of me wants to fight for my marriage, to show Rachel that underneath the lies, the man she fell in love with is still here, to fight for my kids, to make sure I'm still a part of their lives, to fight for my company, to prove that despite the personal complications, Meridian is a good business that does things the right way. But another part of me wonders if everyone would be better off if I just let go. If I gave Rachel the divorce she wants, agreed to whatever custody arrangement she thinks is best, settled with Marcus to make the lawsuit go away, and faded into the background of my own company. Maybe that's what I deserve for the choices I've made. I honestly don't know anymore. I'm exhausted and heartbroken and so full of regret I can barely function. I keep looking at pictures of Rachel and the kids, remembering moments from our life together, and wondering if any of it was real or if it was all just built on the foundation of my lies. The sun's starting to come up now. Another day of this nightmare. My lawyer wants to meet this afternoon to go over strategy for the divorce proceedings. Robert wants to talk about how to handle things at Meridian. My therapist somehow had a cancellation and can see me at noon. I should probably try to sleep for a few hours, but I don't think I can. I just wanted to be loved for who I was, not what I had. But in trying to make that happen, I created a version of myself that wasn't real. And now I've lost everything trying to protect something that was never really there in the first place. If anyone reading this is keeping a secret from someone they love, especially a big one, please learn from my mistake. Tell the truth, have the hard conversation. Trust that the people who really love you will love you anyway, and that if they don't, it's better to know sooner rather than later. Because living a lie, even a well-intentioned one, will eventually destroy everything you're trying to protect. I don't know if Rachel will ever forgive me. I don't know if I'll get to be a real father to my kids or just a every other weekend visitor. I don't know if my company will survive this scandal or if my reputation is permanently destroyed. I don't know anything anymore except that I made terrible choices and now I'm paying the price. The only thing I know for sure is that I love Rachel, I love our kids, and I would give anything, including the entire $16.9 million company that started this whole mess, to go back and make different choices. But I can't, so now I just have to live with the consequences and hope that somehow, someway, there's a path forward from this disaster. I'm sure I'll update this if anything major happens, but right now I just needed to get it all out. Thanks for reading, if you made it this far. I know I don't deserve sympathy, but I guess I'm just looking for some kind of understanding, or maybe just a place to scream into the void about what an idiot I've been. Wish me luck, I guess. I'm going to need it. Edit update 6 hours later. I tried to sleep after posting this but couldn't, so I've just been sitting here reading the comments that have come in. Some of you are sympathetic, some of you think I'm getting exactly what I deserve, and honestly both reactions feel fair. But something a few people said about me needing to take real accountability instead of just wallowing got me thinking, and I made a decision. I called Rachel. She didn't answer, of course, but I left a voicemail that I'm pretty sure her lawyer would tell me not to leave. I told her I wasn't going to fight the divorce if that's what she really wanted, that I wasn't going to make this harder on her than it already was. But I also told her I was absolutely going to fight for shared custody of our kids because they deserve to have their father in their lives, and being a liar doesn't make me a bad parent. Then I did something bigger. I called an emergency board meeting, which is really just me and my advisors since I own the whole company, but still, and I told them I was going to restructure Meridian's ownership. I'm setting up a trust that will own 60% of the company, with the beneficiaries being Mason and Sophie. The remaining 40% I'm splitting between key employees through an ESOP, employee stock ownership plan. Robert will get the largest share, but I'm distributing it across the people who have actually built Meridian into what it is today. I'm keeping a minority stake, enough to still have a voice but not control, and I'm stepping back from any day-to-day involvement. Robert will be CEO in reality, not just in name. I'm also setting up a generous severance and non-disclosure agreement offer for Jennifer and Amanda if they want it, completely separate from any legal liability issues. They didn't do anything wrong, and they shouldn't suffer professionally because of my choices. As for Marcus's lawsuit, I've instructed my lawyers to make one settlement offer. We'll pay him exactly what he would have earned in salary and benefits for the duration of his performance improvement plan if he'd successfully completed it and kept his job, basically about 6 months of pay and benefits. It's more than he deserves legally, but it's fair compensation for the chaos this situation created. If he doesn't take it, we'll fight the lawsuit and I'm confident we'll win, but at least I can say I tried. For Tyler, I'm going to have Meridian offer him a fair market contract for his design services, reviewed and approved by the marketing team without any input from me. If his work is good enough, he'll get hired. If it's not, he won't. Either way, it'll be on merit. And for Frank and Patricia, I've set up an irrevocable medical trust with $250,000 in it, specifically designated for Patricia's cancer treatment and both of their ongoing healthcare needs. They can't refuse it because it's already done, and they can't give it back because the trust structure won't allow it. They'll hate that I did it, but I don't care anymore. Patricia needs treatment, and I'm not going to let pride kill her. My lawyer says these are rash decisions I'm making while emotional. He's probably right. My financial advisor says I'm giving away too much and potentially tanking my own net worth. Also probably right, but I'm done making decisions based on fear and self-protection. These feel like the right things to do, so I'm doing them. I don't know if any of this will make a difference to Rachel and her family. Probably not, but at least I'm trying to put some action behind my apologies instead of just saying I'm sorry and expecting that to be enough. I'll update again if anything major happens with the divorce or custody stuff. For now, I'm going to try to eat something and maybe sleep for a few hours before my therapy appointment. Edit update 2, day 7. It's been a week since everything imploded, and somehow things have gotten even more complicated. I met with my therapist, Dr. Goldstein, 3 times in the past week, and she's been helping me work through everything. But she also said something that really stuck with me. You're still trying to control the narrative and fix everything with grand gestures. At some point, you need to just sit in the discomfort and let other people have their reactions. She's right, the ownership restructuring, the medical trust for Patricia, the settlement offer, they're all still me trying to manage the situation and control outcomes. Some of them are good decisions, but the motivation is still partially about me trying to make myself feel better and look better. The divorce papers were officially served 2 days ago. Rachel is asking for full physical custody with supervised visitation for me initially, citing my pattern of deception and manipulation as evidence that I might be psychologically harmful to the children. That one hurt more than anything else in this whole mess. The idea that Rachel thinks I would hurt our kids, even emotionally, is devastating. My lawyer Richard says we'll contest the supervised visitation part aggressively, that we have a strong case for shared custody, but that I need to prepare for this to get ugly. He also said that Rachel's lawyer is smart and is going to paint me as someone who manipulates people close to him, which won't be hard given the facts of the case. The custody evaluation process is starting next week. I'll be meeting with a court-appointed psychologist who will assess my fitness as a parent, interview people who know me, and eventually make a recommendation to the judge. Richard says to be completely honest with the evaluator, to not try to minimize or justify what I did, and to focus on my relationship with my kids and my ability to parent them effectively. As for the Meridian situation, word of the ownership restructuring has leaked somehow, and now there's a whole new narrative forming. Some people think I'm doing it out of genuine remorse and a desire to make things right. Others think I'm trying to hide assets before the divorce or shield myself from legal liability. A few articles have been written suggesting I'm stepping back because there's more to the story, that maybe there were worse improprieties that haven't come out yet. There weren't. I've been completely honest about what happened, at least now that it's all out in the open. But once the narrative gets going, it's hard to stop it. Marcus rejected the settlement offer, by the way. His lawyer sent back a counterdemand for $250,000, plus a public apology from the company admitting wrongdoing in his termination. My legal team laughed at it and said we're going to court. Part of me wants to just pay him to make it go away, but Margaret, our legal counsel, says that would set a terrible precedent and could open us up to more frivolous suits from other former employees. Jennifer did take the severance package I offered, along with a strong letter of recommendation and a neutral employment verification agreement. She sent me a brief email through her lawyer thanking me for it, but making clear that she doesn't forgive me and doesn't want any personal contact. I'll take it. At least she's protected professionally. Amanda hasn't responded to the severance offer at all. According to Rachel's sister's social media, Yes, I've been creeping, I'm not proud of it. Amanda is telling people I'm trying to buy her silence. I'm not. I'm trying to make sure she doesn't suffer career damage from being associated with this mess, but I guess the difference doesn't matter to her. Tyler did submit a new design proposal to Meridian's marketing team, and they actually liked it. He's been offered a contract worth about $15,000 for a series of social media assets. I found out about it after the fact. Robert and the team didn't tell me they were considering it, which is exactly how it should be. Tyler apparently asked if I had anything to do with it, was told no, and accepted the contract. Small progress, maybe. The hardest part of this week has been the complete absence of my kids. I haven't seen Mason and Sophie in 7 days. Rachel won't let me talk to them on the phone. She says they're confused and upset, and that me being in contact right now would make it worse. My lawyer says this is potentially parental alienation, and we can bring it up in custody proceedings, but he also says to give Rachel a little space to process everything before we go nuclear. God, I miss my kids so much it physically hurts. Mason had a soccer game yesterday that I've never missed. I drove by the field and watched from the parking lot like a creep, and I could see Rachel there with her parents and siblings, this whole family unit that I used to be part of, and Mason playing his little heart out, and I couldn't go over there. I couldn't cheer for him. I couldn't give him the post-game high five and take him for ice cream like we always do. Sophie's 4th birthday is in 2 weeks. I don't even know if I'll be allowed to see her for it. The thought of missing my daughter's birthday is breaking me in ways I didn't know I could break. I've been staying in the house mostly, working from my home office on the things I still need to handle for Meridian's transition, and otherwise just existing in this weird limbo. A few friends have reached out, but I don't really know what to say to them. Hey, yeah, my wife left me because I've been lying to her for 8 years about being a multimillionaire and secretly employing her family isn't exactly a casual conversation. My parents' closest friends, essentially my aunt and uncle even though we're not related by blood, came over 2 days ago. They'd read the articles and wanted to hear my side of things. I told them everything, and they were sympathetic but also pretty clear that I'd made terrible choices. My pseudo Uncle Paul said something that's been rattling around in my head. You know what your dad would have said about all this. He would have said that character is who you are when being honest is hard. And son, you failed that test over and over again. He's right, my dad was the most honest person I ever knew, sometimes brutally so. He would be so disappointed in me right now. I've also been doing a lot of thinking about why I really kept the secret for so long. At first, I convinced myself it was about wanting to be loved for myself, about keeping money out of the relationship, about protecting what Rachel and I had. But if I'm really honest with myself, it was also about control and fear. I liked being able to help Rachel's family without them knowing. I liked feeling like I was this benevolent force in their lives. I liked the control of it, the power dynamic even if I never would have articulated it that way. And I was terrified that if Rachel knew the truth, she'd change, that she'd see me differently, that what we had would become transactional or complicated. But by trying to prevent those things, I created something so much worse. I created a relationship based on lies. I made Rachel into someone who didn't have full information about her own life and marriage. I took away her agency and her choice. And that's unforgivable, really. Dr. Goldstein asked me in our last session what I would do if I could go back to that first date with Rachel. Would I tell her the truth right away? And I realized that if I'm really honest, I don't know. Because if I'd told her that first night that I was a wealthy CEO, we might not have had a second date. She might have been intimidated or assumed I was arrogant or just not interested in dealing with that complexity. But Dr. Goldstein pointed out that if that had happened, it would have been Rachel's choice to make. And by not giving her the information, I took away her choice. Every day for 8 years, I took away her choice about whether to be with me, whether to be in a relationship with someone who kept massive secrets, whether to have her family employed by her husband's company. I robbed her of her agency, and I did it over and over again while telling myself I was protecting her. That's the thing I'm sitting with now. Not just that I lied, but that I fundamentally disrespected Rachel by deciding what she could and couldn't handle, what she needed to know and what she didn't. I treated her like a child or a subject, not like a partner. No wonder she's so angry. No wonder she can't even look at me. I don't know how to fix this or if it can even be fixed. My lawyer keeps talking about divorce strategy and custody arguments and asset division, and all I can think about is how I'd give everything away, the house, the company, every dollar I have, if I could just go back and make different choices. But I can't, so now I just have to live with who I am. A man who loved his wife and family so much that he destroyed them trying to protect them. I'll update again when there's news about the custody evaluation or if anything changes with Rachel. For now, I'm just taking it one day at a time and trying to figure out how to be a better person than the one who created this mess. Edit Updates 3, Day 12. I had my first session with the custody evaluator, Dr. Lisa Morrison, yesterday. It was intense and uncomfortable and lasted almost 3 hours. She asked me to walk through the entire history of my relationship with Rachel, my decision to keep my ownership of Meridian secret, and how I've been involved in my kids' lives. I was honest about everything, about the lies, about the justifications I told myself, about the ways I tried to help Rachel's family without them knowing, about how I never directly interfered with personnel decisions, but also how I was never fully hands-off either, about how I've been a present and engaged father to Mason and Sophie, coaching Mason's soccer and doing bedtime routines and being at every school event and doctor's appointment. Dr. Morrison asked me a question that I'm still thinking about. Do you think your children are better off having been raised by someone who would lie to their mother for 8 years, even if you were otherwise a good father to them? I didn't have a good answer. I said that I hoped I could model for them how to take accountability when you make mistakes, how to try to make things right even when you can't undo the harm. But honestly, I don't know if that's enough. She also asked me what I'd do differently if I could go back, and this time I had an answer. I said I would tell Rachel the truth on our third date, after I knew I was falling for her, but before we were so deeply involved that the revelation would destroy everything. I'd tell her about Meridian, about my wealth, about my fears around relationships and money, and then I'd let her decide if she wanted to continue building something with me. Dr. Morrison asked why the third date specifically, and I realized it was because that was the night Rachel told me about her dad's health problems and her family's financial struggles. That was the night I first thought about helping them. If I'd been honest then, everything that came after could have been a conversation, a partnership decision, instead of my secret manipulation. The evaluation continues next week with interviews of people who know me and observations of me with the kids, if Rachel agrees to let that happen. Dr. Morrison said she'd be speaking with Rachel's family members, with my friends and colleagues, and with Mason's teachers and Sophie's daycare providers. I signed releases for all of it. I have nothing to hide anymore. In other news, Patricia was admitted to the hospital 3 days ago. Her cancer has progressed significantly, and the doctors are saying it might be a matter of weeks now, not months. Rachel texted me, the first direct communication I've had from her in almost 2 weeks, to tell me that her mother was dying and that Patricia's final wish was to see her daughter happy and protected from me. That message broke something in me that was barely holding together. I called the hospital and asked to speak to Patricia's care team. Using the medical trust I'd set up, I arranged for her to be transferred to the best palliative care facility in Seattle, a place that specializes in making terminal patients comfortable and giving families space to say goodbye. It costs about $3,000 a day, but the trust covers it. I didn't tell Rachel I was doing it. I didn't ask for credit. I just arranged it through the trust administrator and Patricia's doctors. Rachel found out anyway because the facility contacted her about the transfer, and I got another text. Stop trying to fix everything with money. It doesn't change what you did. She's right, it doesn't, but Patricia shouldn't suffer in a hospital room when she could be somewhere peaceful and comfortable, so I don't regret doing it. Frank called me for the first time since the explosion. I almost didn't answer, but I did. He told me that he appreciated what I'd done for Patricia's care, that the palliative facility was beautiful and was giving their family the space to say proper goodbyes. But then he said, "This doesn't change anything between us. You still destroyed my daughter's life. But for Patricia, for making her comfortable at the end, thank you." It was the closest thing to a kind word I've gotten from any of them, and I broke down crying on the phone. Frank just waited until I composed myself, then said, "Be a good father to those kids. That's all you can do now. Be honest with them and be there for them. Don't screw that up too." Then he hung up. I've been thinking a lot about Mason and Sophie and what all of this means for them. They're so young, 5 and 3, and they won't fully understand what happened for years. Right now, all they know is that Daddy isn't living at home anymore and Mommy is sad a lot. Eventually, they'll learn the whole story, and they'll have to reconcile the father who loved them and was present for them with the father who lied to their mother for their entire lives. I'm terrified of that day, terrified of seeing disappointment in their eyes, of them wondering what else I've lied about, of them not being able to trust me. But Frank is right. All I can do now is be honest going forward and be there for them and hope that's enough. The Marcus lawsuit got a court date, by the way. It's set for 4 months from now, which my lawyers say is actually pretty fast. They're confident we'll win, but they've also warned me that Marcus's lawyer is going to try to make it about more than just wrongful termination. They're going to try to paint a picture of a toxic workplace culture, nepotism, and abuse of power. It's going to be ugly and public, and it's going to keep this story in the news for months. Meridian is handling it better than I feared. A few clients asked questions, but Robert has been great at reassuring them that the company's operations are solid and that personnel matters don't affect service delivery. We haven't lost any major contracts. Employee morale took a hit when the story broke, but Robert addressed it head-on in a company-wide meeting, explaining the situation honestly and reinforcing that the company has always operated with integrity in its business practices. The employee stock ownership plan is moving forward. Our lawyers are drawing up the paperwork, and it should be finalized in about 6 weeks. Robert will end up with about 15% ownership, and the rest will be distributed among about 50 key employees based on their tenure and contribution to the company. People are excited about it, seeing it as a genuine opportunity for wealth building, even if they know it's happening because of my personal crisis. I've been writing letters to Mason and Sophie, even though they can't read yet. I figure someday they might want to know what I was thinking during all of this, what I was feeling, what I learned. So I've been writing to them about mistakes and accountability and love, and how sometimes people mess up so badly they can't fix it, but they still have to try to be better. I don't know if I'll ever give them the letters, maybe when they're older and asking questions about what happened between their mom and me, or maybe I'll just keep them for myself, a record of this horrible chapter and what it taught me. Dr. Goldstein asked me in our last session if I've forgiven myself yet. I said no, and she asked why not. I said because I don't deserve forgiveness, because I hurt people I loved, because the consequences of my actions are still playing out and getting worse. She said something that I'm trying to sit with. Forgiveness isn't about deserving it. It's about releasing yourself from the prison of guilt so you can actually move forward and be better. You can acknowledge you did wrong, you can make amends where possible, you can commit to being different, and you can also forgive yourself. Those things aren't mutually exclusive. I'm not there yet, maybe I won't ever be, but I'm trying. The hardest moments are late at night when the house is quiet and I'm alone with my thoughts. I keep replaying moments from my marriage, looking for signs I missed that Rachel was starting to suspect something, or moments when I could have come clean. There were so many opportunities, so many times when the conversation naturally led toward money or work or the future, and I could have just told the truth. But I didn't, and now I'm here. Tomorrow I'm supposed to have my first supervised visitation with Mason and Sophie, assuming Rachel agrees to it. The supervisor will be a social worker from the court's Family Services Division, and will spend 2 hours at a child-friendly visitation center while someone watches and takes notes on my interaction with my own children. It's humiliating and heartbreaking, but if it's what I have to do to see my kids, I'll do it. I'll do whatever it takes. I'll update after the visitation and let you know how it goes. Send good thoughts or prayers or whatever you believe in. I need all the help I can get.